Hello my soul family, welcome to my School of Light this winter season of 2023. My name is Ch.3 Ramirez and I am a spiritual teacher here at the School of Light. I am also a soul coach, spiritual influencer, and motivational speaker. So I want to invite you all to join my School of Light to get access to my spiritual book club, where we are exclusively reading A Course in Miracles. This is my favorite spiritual book of all time for the spiritual journey because I truly believe that it holds the key to that ascension jump, that bridge between the old life and the new life, that bridge between fear and love, that bridge between the old you and the new you. This is where Jesus offers his teachings of love, of forgiveness, of atonement, how to turn your life around and really purify your soul so that you can live a more holy, spiritual, on purpose, and of light life. God is here to guide us. Our angels are here beside us, and this is just a beautiful book. I just love this book. I know it's pretty big, this book, but it's so worth it to get through all these teachings. And the way that I like to break down this book is I like to do a 30-day challenge. There are exactly 31 lessons in this book, and we're going to read all of them together. And then after we finish the lessons, we have a workbook at the back where we have daily little applications for 365 days, and it's like a putting into practice everything that we've learned. And it's just so amazing because it has the power to change your life. It is a game changer. So join me at my School of Light to get access to these teachings, because it's more than just reading the book. I am teaching you from experience. I've read this book over 3 times, taught this book 3 times, and daily apply it into my life for as long as I can remember, especially after getting a hold of this book. And it was the first book that appeared to me on my spiritual journey. So I know that it was Jesus really putting forth these teachings as importance, as priority, and as key to turn your life around. So join me, go to ch3ramirez.com/school. Today we're gonna join for another gathering. So if you want access to today's video plus all the other episodes, make sure that you join. Have an amazing and beautiful day. Grab your cup of coffee and join me. Namaste. Alright, my soul family, so I'm going to let you all in to a little glimpse of today's episode and the start of Chapter 3. Chapter 3, to be honest, is one of my favorite chapters because it is about retraining the mind. And this is where it all begins. Because when you're living through fear, it's because your mind has been conditioned that way. It's maybe perhaps the traumas have conditioned that fear. Maybe it's what you've been taught as a child. Maybe it's what you've seen growing up as a child in the world happening, or whatever is in front of you in your current reality. And all of that trains our mind, right? We all are trained in some way. And it's not just training the body. It's the training of the mind, because it's in the mind that it all begins, right? So how do we recondition our soul and our mind and intellect to start to see from a different lens, from a perspective of love, even when we are tempted to see things through the eyes of our ego, which will create this fear, because that's where this fear stems from. It is from the ego. It doesn't serve you. When you are acting and reacting out of love, it's because your higher self is taking over. And that is what Jesus is trying to teach us here. And that's our goal with the series. It's eventually to reach this embodiment of living through our higher self, so that we only see love, we only react with love, and we forgive. We give second chances, because that's what loving people do, right? That's what angelic, heavenly people do, pure in soul, heart, and spirit. So let's get started then with Chapter 3. And as a little introduction as well, Chapter 1 was all about the introduction to miracles. Chapter 2, the illusion of separation. So we got like a little background and foundation as to what it is that we are diving deep into. And this chapter is finally when we're starting to learn the basics of how to turn around all this distortion, all this that is illusion, deception, right? Because there is no such thing as separation between you and God. That is created by the ego, and if anything, that is created by the devil, right? That's not God, that's not Jesus, that's not our angels. That is even your own mind playing tricks on you, which is what we learned in chapter 2. And that is what creates mental health issues. And this is a great book I like to see as a psychologist first, right? Because I've been a psychologist for over 10 plus years, and I'm still doing counseling as well on the side of my soul coaching business. And I recommend this book to my clients because this is a powerful book that is all mental health. Because guess what? It's all about the mind, right? And mental health is the mind state. It's all mental. It's not emotional. As much as some people want to believe, it's not really that emotional. That's more where healing and like holistic spiritual practices come in. Like, you know, doing your like heart chakra openings, things that I do also more in my health and wellness brand. Emotional, talking about it, yes, in therapy. But a lot of the times when people are dealing with a specific mental health issue, whether that be depression, anxiety, phobias, fear, it's all the mind, because the mind is what's controlling that, right? Not the emotions. When you experience traumas per se, you have a reason for that, right? That is explainable for you to feel that certain way because there's an emotional burden there. There's an emotional cause, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's us humans responding survival mode, right? Fight or flight. So that's something that is not to be seen as a mental health disorder. And that's where I like to, you know, kind of set my boundaries when it comes to psychology and speaking to my clients, because not everything is a mental health issue. And others situations is spiritual. And this book also taps into the spiritual. You know, if you're living through your ego, you're obviously holding on to something. You're obviously experiencing blocks in your spiritual growth, in your soul evolution. There's something deeper going on. And it might even be deeply spiritual as well. So let's begin then with chapter 3, Retraining the Mind. And I do recommend that you take notes. If you have the book, which I think is best, underline, highlight, write notes along the margins. That's what I've been doing, as you can obviously see how many times I've read this book. It's like written all over, but it helps me to teach better as well, because I have thoughts that came through the previous times that I read it. And now I'm able to not only articulate it, but then explain it at a deeper level as well. So let's begin then. This is a course in mind training. I did underline that. All learning involves attention and also focus, right? And study at some level. So we're needing to study this, right? This is not something that can just be learned magically with the blink of an eye, with the snap of your fingers. It needs to be learned. It needs to be taught. I am teaching you once I've learned it in my life, and then you need to apply it. That's how you put it to practice, right? So some of the later parts of the course rest too heavily on those earlier sections not to require their study. You will also need them for preparation, and without this, you may become much too fearful when the unexpected does occur to make constructive use of it. However, as you study these earlier sections, you will begin to see some of their implications, which will be amplified considerably later on. So the reason that a solid foundation is necessary is because of the confusion between fear and awe, to which we have already referred and which so many people hold. You will remember that we said that awe is inappropriate in connection with the sons of God, because you should not emphasize or you should not experience awe in the presence of your equals. However, it was also emphasized that awe is a proper reaction in the presence of your Creator. And I did underline that because that's a form of respect, right? When you acknowledge God as something great. I have been careful to clarify my own role in the atonement, and this is Jesus speaking, right? Through the translators who wrote this book, without ever either over or understating it. I have also tried to do the same in connection with yours. I have stressed that awe is not an appropriate reaction to me because of our inherent equality. So some of the later steps in this course, however, do involve a more direct approach to God Himself. It would be most unwise to start on these steps without careful preparation, or awe will be confused with fear, and the experience will be more traumatic than beatific. Healing is of God in the end. So again, this brings us back that this healing, these miracles are God's doing. And at the end of the day, we need to surrender to God and leave it to God. So the means are being carefully explained to you. Revelation may occasionally reveal the end to you, but to reach it, the means are needed. And the means is the studying, is the retraining, is the action behind it, right? And now we get started with section 2, special principles for miracle workers. The miracle abolishes the need for lower order concerns, since it is an out of pattern time interval. The ordinary considerations of time and space do not apply. When you perform a miracle, I will arrange both time and space to adjust to it. 2. Clear distinction between what has been created and what is being created is essential. All forms of correction or healing rest on this fundamental correction in level perception. Another way of stating the above point is never confuse right with wrong-mindedness. Responding to any form of miscreation with anything except a desire to heal or a miracle is an expression of this confusion. The miracle is always a denial of this error and an affirmation of the truth. Only right-mindedness can create in a way that has any real effect. Pragmatically, what has no real effect has no real existence. So its effect then is emptiness. Being without substantial content, it lends itself to projection in the improper sense. 5. The level adjustment power of the miracle induces the right perception for healing. Until this has occurred, healing cannot be understood. Forgiveness is an empty gesture unless it entails correction. And without this, it is essentially judgmental rather than healing. So miraculous forgiveness is only correction. It has no element of judgment at all. Father, forgive them, for they not know what they do, right? And I will underline this because this is a classic quote from the Bible, and it holds more value than we know, right? And this in no way evaluates what they do. It's strictly limited to an appeal to God to heal their minds. For whatever they've done, forgive them, right? That's what he's saying. There is no reference to the outcome of their misthought. That does not matter. 7. The biblical injunction, be of one mind, is the statement for revelation readiness. My own injunction, do this in remembrance of me, is what Jesus said, is the request for cooperation from miracle workers, hence light workers, why we all collaborate, come together, and what we're all learning. And we are going to have also, at the back of this book, there's an extra manual for teachers who want to teach this book, or simply light workers who want to spread the word. So that's going to be a very powerful episode as well. Now, it should be noted that the two statements are not in the same order of reality. The latter involves a time awareness, since to remember implies recalling the past in the present. Time is under my direction, but timelessness belongs to God alone. In time, we exist for and with each other. In timelessness, we coexist with God. And what does all this mean? I did underline these time. Time is under my direction. Timelessness belongs to God alone. Timelessness, in timelessness, we coexist with God. And what this all means, I wrote in the margin, it's Christ consciousness in the name of God. And that's what we're trying to reach. And that's what we will reach when we're living through our higher self. Section 3, atonement without sacrifice. There is another point which must be perfectly clear before any residual fear which may still be associated with miracles, becomes entirely groundless. The crucifixion did not establish the atonement, the resurrection did. And I did just do a whole series on the resurrection presentation series. And of course, Jesus was the main event of this and the main theme of that presentation series. But it brings us to this now, right? After the resurrection, on your personal level, in your individual life, it's because of the atonement. It's because that you seek to turn your life around, to cleanse your spirit. And then it's not a sacrifice, because it shouldn't feel like a sacrifice to let go of anything that is not of God. The sinful life is not anywhere in this new life, and we're not tempted by it anymore. That's why it refers to it as without sacrifice. So the crucifixion did not establish the atonement, it was the resurrection, right? Because the crucifixion, as we see, is like the death of a cycle, whereas the resurrection was the rebirthing of a new cycle of Jesus in spirit form and joining us in a new form, because he's still all present around us on earth, right? And when he died on that cross, he only died in flesh but not in spirit. So it was just the death and the ending of a cycle, but then the start of a new one. So this is a point which many very sincere Christians have misunderstood. No one who is free of the scarcity error could possibly make this mistake. If the crucifixion is seen from an upside down point of view, it does appear as if God permitted and even encouraged one of his sons to suffer because he was good. Many ministers preach this every day. And this particularly unfortunate interpretation, which arose out of the combined misprojections of a large number of my would-be followers, has led many people to be bitterly afraid of God. This particularly anti-religious concept enters into many religions, and this is neither by chance nor by coincidence. Yet the real Christian would have to pause and ask, how could this be? It is likely that God himself would be capable of the kind of thinking which his own words have clearly stated is unworthy of man. So the best defense, as always, is not to attack another's position, but rather to protect the truth. And what is this truth? Is by preaching God, is by putting God first, right? Rather than judging someone else's actions or attacking. That's not our job, right? It is unwise to accept any concept if you have to turn a whole frame of reference around in order to justify it. This procedure is painful in its minor applications and genuinely tragic on a mass basis. Persecution is a frequent result undertaken to justify the terrible misperception that God himself persecuted his own son on behalf of salvation. The very words are meaningless.